In the first video we looked at the basics of outlining. You can see this is the practice sheet I used then, and in this video we're going to look at the basics of painting, and the type of painting we're going to do is called flood filling. Flood filling is best done flat and is the standard technique used in glass painting. With it you can work on any flat surface, glass, plastic, the acetate we used here. Now, to make it a little bit easier, I'm going to stick my acetate down onto a clear board. If you haven't got a clear board, don't worry too much. That's what I'm going to do, and it just means I can keep it, it helps keep it flat, and I can move it around. And I'll show you why you may need to do that in a bit. So again, just a bit of masking tape. And stick my acetate down onto the clear board as flat as possible. You should also make sure your table is flat, and I've had a spirit level on this table just to make sure, again, it is as flat as I can get it. I'm going to use a mixture of paints. They're all flowing paints. The Franco Bourgeois there. It's a red colour. Green Pebeo. They're both solvent base. There's a flowing water base. It's actually a homemade one there. This one again is a Pebeo paint. I've lightened it a little bit because it was quite dark colour. And finally, here's a Marabou Glass Art. So I will use those. They're all flowing paints. We'll talk a bit more about colours and special types of paint all flowing in a different video, but for now I'm going to use most of these straight from the bottle. When you're working, you're thinking flood filling, you're not thinking of brush painting. You can use a paintbrush, I've got a paintbrush here, but don't think about brushing it onto your work. Think about dripping it on and pushing it around so it gets right to the edges. Let's start with the Marabou, and I will use the paintbrush for this. But plenty of paint, and just push it to make sure it gets right up to the edge. You don't want any gaps. Gaps won't look like much when it's down like this, but as soon as you put it up to the light when it's dry, those gaps will stand out more than you can know. So make sure you get it right up to the outliner, and I'm just dripping the paint on, then pushing it around. And because it's level, it's finding, well, its own level. There we go. And what I shall do is I'll just pick up the whole thing and just take a little look there, make sure there's no gaps and no bubbles. Now that will dry nice and smooth and flat. Now I did that with a paintbrush. I have to say, normally I tend to use one of these, which is a solid brush, sort of rubbery on the end. Now the reason I use these is I'm not brushing, I'm pushing around, and these brushes are great for that. Also, they're very quick for cleaning. They used to be very expensive, but you can sort of get copies of them now. So here's a Pebeo paint, use it in exactly the same way. Drop it on and then just push it around to make sure it gets right up to the outliner. That's where the term flood filling comes in. There we go. And as you can see, brush is much easier to clean. You can use another colour with it almost straight away. Finally, I'll just do the same thing with the water-based paint to show you the technique is basically the same. These aren't quite as transparent, but they do dry more transparent than they look when you're first putting them on. Doesn't flow quite as well. Plenty of paint. Make sure it gets up to the edges. I should just lift up my work to check both that one and the green. A little gap there, a little gap there. Just make sure it's pushed on. Nice smooth finish, and it should dry, tacky dry, half an hour or so. To be fully dry, it will probably take a day. Now you can carry on and try out the rest of those, but I shall put that to the side. We did have another practice sheet as well in the last video, and that was this one. Let me just say, I put that one off to dry. I have put it somewhere flat. It's as important that it dries somewhere flat as it is that you're painting it somewhere flat. Again, I shall move this onto a clear board. Just makes it easier to see your work. And you'll notice I'm working over a white sheet as well. That makes it easier. Makes it easier to see your work and to move it around when you've finished it. If I was trying to move the sheet on its own, it would be really difficult, but because I put it onto a solid board, that makes it easier. Let's put that on there. Goes my tape. Now, if we start with these flowers, the sections which are the same colour, you can do one after another, but leave that to go at least tacky dry. That's half an hour or so for the solvent-based paint. It's a bit longer for the water-based. Leave them to go tacky dry before you try another colour. So normally when I'm doing something like this, I would start in the centre and work my way out, which means I'll start by doing yellow in the middle there. Plenty of paint. Now I'm going to leave that to dry before I do the outside, but just to show you, just check that, just to show you, I will do the outside of one of the other ones. So right up to the line, not over it, but up to the line. Teasing the paint, making sure you get a nice even coverage. There we go, and as normal, I will just lift that up Make sure there's no gaps there at all. There we go. And then when those have dried, at least tacky dry, I can do the blue on the outside and the yellow on the inside of that one. Now you don't have to stick to just one colour in an area. Let me show you here. This is a Pebbio yellow. Let me just show you, occasionally you can stray outside the line. For whatever reason, you sort of push it over the line like that. Just clean your brush and you should be able to scoop it back up again whilst it's wet. If you can't, don't worry, you should still be able to chip it off when it's dry, but if you can scoop it off while it's wet like that, it's much easier. So carry on showing you how to use more than one colour in an area. Obviously I don't want to contaminate my paints with different colours. This is a citron yellow. Dries slightly different to how it looks when it's wet, which is a bit ambery. That's a citron yellow. And if over the other side I put some red, again being careful not to contaminate the two paints. I can see a drop I've got out there. This one was by mistake. There we go. Red in this side. And I'm just going to encourage them to meet in the middle. And by putting yellow one side and red the other, hopefully we'll get sort of orangey effect in the middle and a gradient of colour in between. We'll let that dry and you can see how that is then. Right, we'll leave those all to dry and we'll finish those flowers and you can see how they look. Well, these are tacky dry now at least, so I should be able to move this. I'll try and bring it in front of the light so you can hopefully see. I won't leave it there too long because it's not fully dry, so it could still move the paint. I hope you can see nice smooth finish to the work, little bit of a blend there. So I suggest you carry on, do a few more, try some different colour combinations and just practice getting that smooth finish with flood filling and pushing the paint up to the edge of the outliner. In our next video we're going to make something. Practice is great, practice is good, but in the end the idea is to make something. So in the next video we will be making our first light capture for the window. Hope you enjoyed the video. We'll see you again next time.